What was said were highly offensive racial terms shouted out by Tourette's campaigner John Davidson, who also has the condition. The comments were shouted out while two black performers, Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan, were on stage. There's been a lot of reaction. Delroy Lindo has said he wished someone from BAFTA had come to speak to them after it happened. Others have said they should have been immediately apologised to after the incident. A spokesperson for Tourette's Action, a Tourette's organisation, has said that it's vital to understand that for people like John Davidson, outbursts like this are involuntary and don't reflect their thoughts or beliefs. The BBC has apologised for not editing out the comments before the programme was put out on BBC One and iPlayer, but there are still wider questions for both BAFTA and the BBC. For BAFTA, were all the right elements and procedures in place that would have been fair to John Davidson and people at the ceremony for something that wasn't highly unlikely? And similarly for the BBC, which is supposed to have procedures for dealing with this kind of scenarios, why were the comments not edited out before BBC One and iPlayer broadcasts happened? And also, why it was left up on iPlayer for so long, more than 12 hours after the initial broadcast?
Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of Vow. I'm your host as always, Kendra Dix here. Glad you can join us here on Vow. We talk about Michael B. Jordan being interrupted at a British show being called the N-word. We'll get to it in a minute, but first thing first, join in the conversation using the hashtag VowHealConnect. And don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe is caring. Tell a friend, call a friend, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss a thing. Here on Vow, we talk about Michael B. Jordan being called the N-word. At the 2026 BAFTA Film Award, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo was on stage presenting an award when audience member John Davidson, a Tourette syndrome activist whose life is depicted in the film I Swear, shouted the N-word from the crowd.
Good evening. Delroy and I are delighted to be presenting the first BAFTA of the night for a vital part of movie making.
Davidson had been introduced earlier, and organizers had warned attendees that he might make involuntary noises or outbursts due to his condition. The incident was aired unedited on BBC's 2-hour delayed broadcast, which led significant backlash. The BBC later apologized and removed the uncensored portion from its streaming platform. Host Adam Cummins addressed the audience during the show, explaining the outbursts were involuntary symptoms of Tourette's and asking for understanding.
You may have heard some strong and offensive language tonight. If you've seen the film I Swear, you will know that film is about the experience of a person with Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome is a disability, and the tics you've heard tonight are involuntary, which means the person who has Tourette syndrome has no control over their language. We apologise if you were offended.
Response from others. Some entertainment figures like Jamie Foxx and Wendell Pierce publicly criticized how the situation was handled, saying the N-word should never have gone unfiltered and that the focus should have been an apology to Jordan and Lindo. Delroy Lindo said that he and Jordan did what they had to do by continuing the presentation, but wished someone from BAFTA had spoken to them afterward privately. There is a conversation online about whether Davidson meant what he shouted or whether it was generally an involuntary tic tied to his neurologic condition. Some, including Jamie Foxx on social media, have expressed skepticism about attributing it purely to involuntary behavior, while others defend understanding around Tourette's. There was a racial slur shouted during the BAFTAs while Jordan was on stage. Organizers and broadcasts say it was linked towards the involuntary symptom of Tourette syndrome. There is a disagreement among commentators about whether the explanation is fully accounts for it, but there's no evidence or any beef or personal dispute between Jordan or whoever shouted the word. It's unexpected. The incident at a televised award show, not planned attack or confrontation. Yes, Michael B. Jordan with that comment that was heard. I know he had a lot of shockwaves. I was kind of shocked myself. I didn't know about it until someone close to me told me about it, and I was like, what? And so I did my homework, my research, and found out what was going on. I was shocked and stunned. Like, wow. And they was trying to say this person had Tourette syndrome, which it is a touchy subject, but at the same time, it shouldn't be avoided because it shouldn't be condemned like that. But hey, some people try to get away with someone unless you had to tell them about themselves in the first time. Let's hear what you people had to say. Let's hear what you people had to say on what people say right here, right now.
Professionalism that was displayed by these two actors while being at an award ceremony and hearing a slur being shouted at both of them while presenting an award is astonishing. It's amazing because I don't know if I would be able to keep a composed face. A clip from the BAFTA Awards is making its rounds where the N-word was shouted by someone in the audience at both Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo while they were presenting an award. The person who shouted the slur has Tourette's, and there's this debate going around whether if it was racist, and if you think it was racist, that's ableist. Here's my take. Shouting an offensive slur, which is the N-word, at two black people on stage is not random. It's not like yelling the F word or another curse word. It's a slur that is targeted at black people. You saw black people and you associated them with that slur. That is racism. You can be disabled and still engage in racism. As of now, there hasn't been an apology from the BAFTAs itself, just an apology from the host basically saying, oh, he has Tourette's, he can't help it. Which I do realize Tourette's is uncontrollable. You can't control the outbursts. But to me, that outburst just reveals that you have said it before and that you associate it with black people, and that's what you think of black people when they come into your sight. Sinners has had an interesting award season so far, and this adding to it is just sad, especially Black History Month. It's just sad.
And was anyone else in attendance at this show called a slur? I understand the person had Tourette's. I know vocal tics are involuntary, but I will say, wow, this is quite on the nose, isn't it? Maybe that's normal. I don't know. Let's have a conversation. So two absolute legends are on stage, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, and they're presenting an award, and they get called the N-word by an audience member who has Tourette's. Now, everybody knew he had Tourette's. The room had already been briefed. Apparently, he had been having tics throughout the show, and there are two conversations happening in response to this. The first conversation happening starts with this question, and I do think the question is asked sarcastically, but does Tourette's make you racist? And people are saying that they know people with Tourette's, and those people don't blurt out racial slurs, so they're not understanding what happened here. And a lot of people are saying they don't care that the person had Tourette's. What he said was inexcusable. There's a second conversation happening, though, and that conversation centers around, okay, the person with Tourette's does not mean to hurt you. They cannot control it. Sometimes people with Tourette's blurt out really horrible things, and it's not malicious, it's not bad intent, it's neurological. They cannot help it, and I can hold space for that. Here's the part that I'm struggling with. It's still harmful and hurtful, maybe even humiliating, but I won't go too far. It's at least harmful to be on stage in front of your peers and colleagues and have that word thrown at you. So I'm really struggling because on the one hand, I do understand the arguments, like he didn't intend it, it was not malicious, but the little devil on my shoulder is like, dang, how much grace are you supposed to extend? How much forgiving and forgetting are people going to be asked to do? And I really don't have a clean answer. Again, I'm not saying that there was racist intent. I don't know. But I think at the bare minimum, we can acknowledge that it was harmful and hurt, even though the person didn't intend to do that. And I think it's also okay to acknowledge that people, and we're in a climate where people are just hearing slurs every single day, and people are really sick of it, especially on social media. So yeah, people are going to have really strong feelings about this. I have strong feelings about this, and I think it's okay to sit with that and try not to jump to really rash conclusions, especially if you don't understand everything about the disease. And so I really am trying to hold space, but also acknowledge, like, yeah, bruh.
The thing you should know about this moment is that the BAFTAs were not streamed live, so they saw this happen in real time. Then when they edited together their broadcast, they decided to leave this in, not remove that moment or bleep it out or edit it. They chose to just show you this as it happened, and you should ask yourself, why is that? How they actually put together the broadcast is laid out in this article right here, because they were very concerned about political speech and the potential for people saying things they didn't like. As stated here, the BAFTA Film Awards are not broadcast live, meaning the BBC must edit a 3-hour show into a 2-hour broadcast window. The details are laid out here. Now, one of the things that was cut was the end of the speech from Akinola Davies Jr., where he said this.
Children, to the economic migrant, the conflict migrant, those under occupation, dictatorship, persecution, and those experiencing genocide, you matter, your stories matter more than ever. Your dreams are an act of resistance. To those watching at home, archive your loved ones, Archive your stories yesterday, today, and forever. For Nigeria, for London, the Congo, Sudan, free Palestine. Thank you.
Let me clearly say, fuck the BAFTAs. They did not care about John Davidson, did not care about Delroy Lindo, did not care about Michael B. Jordan. See them leaving this in as an insidious choice towards all parties involved. The question we all have to ask ourselves about all of this is why.
I know you lying. I just know you lying. 'Cause ain't no way. In case you haven't heard already, everybody's favorite cousin Michael B. Jordan and Uncle Delroy Lindo were presenting at the BAFTA Awards over in London, and this man yelled out the N-word while they were presenting. They've since announced that the reason that it happened is because the man who said it has Tourette syndrome, and he's there because a movie that's inspired by his life is nominated. And I personally feel like that's not an excuse. And if your family know that that's one of your tics, then you don't need to be around no nigga. And if that wasn't bad enough, the host, Alan Cumming, then gets on stage, thanks everybody for being understanding, and then proceeds to explain that the man has Tourette syndrome and gives a breakdown of what Tourette syndrome is and how it works, but did not give a breakdown of how horrible and harmful the N-word is to the black community. You want to educate everybody on Tourette syndrome, but you didn't want to get on the stage and talk about the history of the N-word and how it has been used to harm people and how it harmed people in that very space. The two people that were presenting that just so happened to be black when his tick showed up. Listen, don't piss me off. Don't. Y'all over there on the other side of the pond, y'all are about to piss me off.
Not only was there a racial slur said at the BAFTAs, but what was even worse was their response. Alan Cumming went up on stage to address what had happened with someone who had Tourette syndrome. An actor was up for an award. And he said, "You may have noticed some strong language in the background there. This can be a part of how Tourette syndrome shows up in some people as the film explores that experience," Alan Cumming told the audience. I'm sorry, but that is not an acceptable response, because strong language to me is the F word, it's the B word, it's the C word. The N word is a racial slur. It is not a strong language, and the fact that that is all the BAFTAs had to say at the time is very, very disappointing, but not surprising, because this is an award show that has historically not cared about black-led films or black artists at all. But to just say there's some strong language in the background there's no way I could have been as composed as Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan were on stage, but this is just another experience that, you know what, they probably have to just it happens. Listen, I don't want to disregard someone with Tourette syndrome, but there should have been a better response to what he had said, because that's unacceptable, and I think the actor himself should kind of come out and apologize. And even though we can't control what he says, he had to have either used that word a lot or said it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. What do you guys think below down in the comments? Let me know.
Racial slur was shouted when Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were presenting an award at the BAFTAs. The person who shouted the word has Tourette's. This is John Davidson, and he was at the BAFTAs because he is the subject of a BAFTA-nominated film. BAFTAs air 2 hours after they're filmed, so they had 2 hours to edit that moment or edit that sound, the word, out, and they didn't do that. And then Alan Cumming, who was hosting the BAFTAs, came out later on in the night saying, "You may have noticed some strong language in the background. This can be part of how Tourette's syndrome shows up for some people as the film explores that experience. Thanks for your understanding and helping create a respectful space for everyone." Also adding, Tourette's syndrome is a disability and the tics you've heard tonight are involuntary, which means the person who has Tourette's syndrome has no control over their language. We apologize if you're offended tonight. According to Variety, John Davidson left on his own accord in the second half of the ceremony. I don't feel comfortable including footage of the moment that this happened when I'm sitting here saying that they had 2 hours to either remove the audio, not include that clip. There's options. Award shows do this all the time where they don't include people accepting their awards, or they have to cut segments because of timing purposes. But in this moment, it was left in.
So the editing was a choice. Got it. Now, you guys already heard the slur circling around the world, so I'm not going to replay it, but I want to get into the details behind what's going on during these BAFTA awards. Now, as you guys had already known, the Tourette's advocate, who goes by the name of John Davidson, was the one who said, well, that slur. Now, there are a number of reasons why people are upset, and let me explain to you why. Now, according to Blackish Press, vis-a-vis Variety magazine, they stated that a number of things were going on after the slur was said. Now, first, it was a tape-delayed broadcast, so individuals are trying to figure out if it was tape-delayed, why couldn't they have edited that out? Because at the same time, Nicola Davies Jr., and I hope I'm saying his name correctly, had stated the phrase Free Palestine, but that was edited out. Now, it's also being rumored that after Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan had gotten off the stage, they were never actually addressed about the situation or offered an apology. But more so over, it's the fact that it was not edited out when it could have been. And that's really the main reason why the majority of people are upset. Now, there are individuals who do have Tourette's and who are advocates for this disability who are basically explaining the reasoning behind this set of words or phrases were even uttered. Now, I highly encourage you to watch those videos as they come across your For You page, because as individuals who do have Tourette's and individuals who advocate for the understanding of Tourette's, they're going to be better off explaining what's going on in this situation. Now, as for BAFTA, they have not really made a statement as to what's going on, why they allowed that portion of the award show to air, and ipso facto. But if they do, I'm going to keep you guys posted.
I want to quickly touch on the Michael B. Jordan BAFTA situation because this is a very unique situation. To my understanding, during the BAFTA Awards, Tourette's advocate John Davidson blurted out a racial slur while Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage presenting. A lot of people were wondering why he had that particular tick. Now, I am in no way an expert on Tourette's, but it reminded me of an interview that I did with someone who has Tourette's, and they said that sometimes these involuntary tics come from either thoughts you repress or subconscious thoughts. It could be as simple as seeing someone who is bald and blurting out that you're bald. I am in no way excusing that at the sight of two black men that is the word that came out. But something else that I remembered is that tics can create horribly embarrassing situations for the person that has Tourette's. With that said, we can hold space for that while also holding space for how horribly embarrassing it is while you are on stage and you are an esteemed actor to be called a racial slur in front of all your peers, to be broadcasted internationally. And both Delroy and Michael B. Jordan are grown men who I'm sure have their own traumatic experiences being called that word. What's missing is, unless you have been called a racial slur, you don't understand how demeaning and dehumanizing it is. And I can only imagine what it would feel like for that to happen on an international stage. So while we can hold space for being empathetic and understanding to the challenges of having a disability, I think we should also be empathetic and hold space simultaneously for the degrading and dehumanizing situation that Michael and Delroy were subjected to.
I don't care how this comes off, but disability cannot be used to excuse racism. And y'all will not gaslight black people into thinking otherwise. Tonight was the BAFTAs, and even though it was not live streamed, it was being broadcast in the UK, where John Davidson, who has Tourette's, who is a Tourette's campaigner, blurted the N-word with the hard ER to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo while they're presenting the first award of the night. You can hear the gas in the audience. You can see Michael and Delroy try to keep it together. The BAFTA chose to keep this in the broadcast instead of edit it out. You didn't have Alan Cummins immediately coming out after trying to diffuse the situation, saying that this is what happens with people with Tourette's. Some things happen. But I'm sorry, racism should not be happening. I know people are going to say, oh, well, disability will make you say things you don't mean. And why are you surprised that this happens in the UK, the OG colonizer? To have these two black men who have lived through so much in this world, especially Delroy, he's in his 70s, to be in an industry event where your project is nominated, where you are presenting, and you hear that from the audience, God only knows what's going through their mind. During freaking Black History Month, I hate this for them. The BAFTAs or Davidson have not put out an apology since this happened. This award season has already been rough for the Sinners Camp, especially when it comes to the snubs and people making memes out of them. Now you have this situation. And y'all give the black people a break.
You people had a lot to say. You people didn't hold back one bit. You people let it be known what's going on by Michael B. Jordan. Hopefully, this incident won't happen again, and Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo won't have to endure something like that. Glad that Jamie Foxx and a lot of others called the BAFTAs out about that situation, which was not in, it was in poor taste on them for not addressing it the way they should have. Thank you all for watching this edition of Viral. I've been your host, Kendrick Dixon, saying so long. We'll see you next time for another edition of Viral.